Are you tired of the same old bland, boring meats? Well, do we have a solution for you? Introducing Modern Man Morganelli's Medium Meats. Our meats are exactly your average cut. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's a promise. Modern Man Morganelli's Medium Meats are seasoned decently, with enough salt to realize that you might just want a little more, but you're not going to do anything about it. Are you curious about quality? That's a question that we can partially answer. Our meats are sourced from the leftover units at somewhat local farms, so the quality should be decent. So what are you waiting for? Bring your boring meal to the pinnacle of mediocrity with Modern Man Morganelli's Medium Meats today. Okay. Anyway, so that was our sponsor for today's video, Modern Man Morganelli's Medium Meats. But now with that out of the way, we can get on to the actual good stuff, which is going to be the power rankings. So we have the Kraken 11 power rankings for week 7. So after last week, we got to take a look here. It was a pretty interesting week, and there's one matchup that came up really close that there at the end with Zach and Robert, about a couple points there at the end. So that was exciting. But everything else, I mean, the Jake and Chris jersey bet didn't really it kind of fizzled out a little bit. It's more of a toilet bowl matchup than anything else. But it was a very down week, I'd say, for a lot of teams. You got a couple of big scores here between Jenny and Freaky. But everyone else seemed pretty dampened a bit. So it might just have been one of those weeks where things were down, and then we could pop back. So we'll see. It's obviously we're heading into bye weeks now, so that's something to be cognizant of. But anyway, we should just jump right into it. So this is the power rankings from last week. So I'm gonna go ahead and actually, let me see if I can. You guys aren't seeing anything, but I just have to change a few things so I can do this appropriately. So let me grab this little rectangle, do these colors, and where is it? We got to do the fill, make it solid color, and then we'll just clear all of those out and move back to the brushes, and then. So I'm still going to keep Robert in the basement. His team did well. Dak had a good game. I'm not going to spend too much time on it just because there's some other teams that don't get as much attention as Elliot pointed out to me that I always talk about the same few teams. So I'll try to spread it around a little bit more this time around. But there was a lot of touchdowns that Robert had. It was a decent week, but this feels almost like a ceiling kind of game for him. So I don't think this is enough for me to pull him out of the basement yet, even with a number of teams that had performances that were not as good. So we're going to keep Robert. You unfortunately stay down there in the basement. Not personal, but that's just where you have to be for now. But here's where things are going to get interesting. So we're going to move now into that next tier. So if you recall, last week we had, actually I don't remember the order, but I remember it was like me, Jenny, McGovern. Was that it? Might have been me. It might have just been me, Jenny, and McGovern in this bottom tier. If I'm looking at it right. Yeah. Me. Oh, and Jay, of course. So that does bring up. I guess I was gonna keep Robert down there, but do it. So Jay's team is gonna get better. So like I said, for Robert, that was his ceiling. Jay's team's like at the bottom, and he's been more ravaged by injury than anyone else in the league. I mean, that's insane to have Connor. Mike Williams, Deontay Johnson, but even beyond that, you have Deshaun Watson, who is just starting to come into form. Really, those are some. He had that one dud of a week in week 2, but he had a couple good games. There's just nothing he could really do about it. And he was missing Travis Kelce week 1, right? I'm pretty sure Travis Kelce was not. Yeah. So what an easy schedule for Kansas City. That's what the league would want anyway. But yeah, so it's been definitely tough sledding, and I think his team is supremely underrated. But given the rest of the field right now, I think there's actually still a decent chance he gets playoffs. So he's 3 games back. Actually, a little bit more than that. He's actually effectively 4 games back, just because he's not beating any of these teams, these 2 3-3 teams in points. So yeah, it's 3. We'll call it 3.5, I guess. So it would definitely be tough to get in, just not impossible. There's 5 weeks to the trade deadline, which is week 11. So even by the trade deadline, he won't be 5-5. He won't be 500. So Some decisions to make there. Well, again, I won't harp on that one for too long, but I do think there, there's an outside chance. I wouldn't be selling the farm. I would wait maybe another week or so, but we'll see. I mean, it just depends. Everyone's in a different position. So I am going to put Jay down here just because of those facts, really. So we're going to do McDonald's, I'm going to spell it this time, right? 2 N's, 2 L's, McDonald's. Awesome. So after that, we're still in the little bit of the bottom tier here. I think if I'm looking at this right, let's take a look. I want to look at my team versus McGovern's team. I think those are really the only things we can look at in this situation. Huge output by the Minnesota defense, which was awesome. Jameson Williams had his first touchdown? I think it was his first NFL touchdown. So there was I didn't actually see it, but I just obviously can tell by the box score that it was a long one. But Taylor is finally getting ramped up a little bit. You know, those aren't Taylor numbers that you need to see, but they're good enough. Ford also putting up some good enough numbers. Pitts has had a couple of good weeks in a row. So this team is decent, but there's definitely a scary floor there. 53 on Demercado for not even being the starter. I don't think I even bid anything on it. I didn't know how that was going to look between him and Ingram. And it looks like Ingram is the guy there. But still a very uninspiring team. I think mine has, compared to his, has just a couple more ways to get better. So I'm going to put McGovern down here at J.K. Dobbin Fan Club. And then I'm going to put Commish right here. Right? So with my team last week, I'm not going to spend really any time on this one either. But it was pretty bad, but there were some signs of life. The CeeDee Lamb came back. Ramondre Stevenson had good efficiency and got a touchdown. There was an injury scare, but he came back. And I was really just a couple of playing Jaleel McLaughlin. Yeah, I kind of just wanted to do it. I was grappling over whether to play him or risk. It was either going to be him or Wandale. I don't think I was ever going to play Rashid Shaheed. And Wandale was injured at the time, or was on the injury report. So I just didn't want to be in a position where I had to basically play Shaheed or nobody else. I just didn't want to do it. So I played McLaughlin. Obviously, that was a big mistake. Even though he looked good, so did Javonte, but that offense really kind of sucks. But I really was encouraged by what I saw at Javonte. So there are still outs. If Devontae Adams has like decent weeks, just average weeks, the numbers start to climb up. There's the potential that's here, right? That's how I feel about it. So it's still a middling team, not very good, but I think settles for for 9th place. So that takes care of 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then, or I guess 12, 11, 10, and 9. So I think here, so last time I think I had Jenny at the top of this tier. So I think actually at this point there's a tier break. I think once you move on from here, there's just a different quality team, and you might say, well, hey, Commish, what about your best friend Jake? He doesn't have Justin Fields, and his team is such poo-poo. I would agree. There is a lot of poo-poo here, but I think again, Eckler is just coming back from injury. Eckler will be fine. That offense will be fine. They went against Dallas, and I think just we saw a lot of guys hitting their floors. I mean, that must have been Hopkins' worst week. So he's had Hopkins for his best and his worst week. We'll see where he lands. He probably will keep putting up 12 or so points, but he does have a good ceiling, and that's a scary floor, honestly. And it'll be even worse if Tannehill's out longer, because Malik Willis can't throw the ball. I watched a lot of Titans games last year, in the last few years, having Derrick Henry, and that offense is not better with Malik Willis. Madison's still getting the elite touches. I mean, that's 22 there, 18 for Eckler. I think that's fine, and James Cook's also getting 14. I think it's just a matter of, pretty sure no TDs and I am very familiar with that. Last year, yeah, 1 TD from Addison. So a couple of 10 targets here, and again, the Justin Fields is definitely the big question mark here. Who knows how long he'll be out? I think maybe I do keep this tier here. So Jake's either at the bottom of the next tier or the top of this tier, and I want to say just looking at the team, I don't think he belongs in the same tier as these 3 teams. So I'm gonna change color here, and I'm gonna do T-Bib. That's a big fall from last week. I think I had him up at number 5. You know, with Eckler coming back, Eckler actually showing that he is human, but we'll see. I mean, he hasn't been an efficient runner for a while. He's just gotten most of his points out of receiving. So I think there's just some question marks on what'll happen with the running backs. But I would take, you know, these are having guys that are 22 touches, 18 touches, 14 touches for your team's RB3, and now you have 13 touches for your RB4 on your team. I think this is fine. I think this is a floor game for Jake. It does get better, but there's a lot of other good talent in the league that's getting better. So like Freaky's team is finally coming back, and Nolan's team continues to perform well. Hasn't had really a down game in quite a while. Zach's team was a little bit of a lower score here, but he had Barkley sitting on the bench. So I think there's just a lot of other high quality teams in the league, and I think Jenny's team is one of them. Depth is scary, and I'll get into that in a moment. And I think she's probably going to be my next team, the number 7 team here. But I think I might mention this a bit last week, that suddenly, with Kamara now back in the fold and Kupp not having lost a step, and Ritter had that great game before, and he continued feeding London this time and feeding Pitts. That's a weird offense, but it's starting to produce good fantasy numbers. I'll say that. Cook's got his first touchdown. I mean, this was Spears was kind of a fluke that end of the game, garbage time, 48-yard catch. But outside of that, all these are legit. I think they're all, this is a high game for London, but London is a phenomenal athlete and a great wide receiver, and they're finally utilizing him. So this could be a scary team. I'm just not entirely sure where it's gonna fit. So I feel it's a good middle of the pack for now, with just a lot of room to grow. Because beyond this, right? Oh, there's Pickens too. Okay, so there is a wide receiver's worth of depth here, but outside of that, there's really not much there. So depth is not great, especially at the running back position, but it's a team that I wouldn't hate having. It's a fantastic team. So I'm gonna put next year here, and what a great comeback this would be too. Then again, she did have some wins, some low scoring wins early on, so she never really was out of it from a standing standpoint. But on the power ranking standpoint, I had this team pretty low, but it's a fun. I like it. I definitely have team envy here. So moving on from Jenny's team and maybe next year, which could be maybe this year. Who knows? It could be anything. But I think we know who the superior of the sear block is, if I'm being honest. So let's see. Moving on from there, I think we start looking at. That's the thing. So I had Morganelli at the bottom of the next tier up before. I want to look at this matchup. There could be something in here. So Josh Allen, I know he's going in for some additional imaging, I want to say, but maybe that was yesterday. I don't remember. Head injury, blah blah blah. Shoulder is the bigger concern. Yeah, he had his UCL injury last year, so this is different. Yeah, I mean, it's too hard. It's too hard to know yet. So if Josh Allen's totally fine, then this team's going to be ranked higher. If he's not, these are good numbers. That's not a brutal playoff schedule, but it's mostly a brutal playoff schedule with a nice softie there in the middle. But overall, the depth at running back on this team is fantastic, and I got to watch Derrick Henry, which is my favorite player to watch, and again, running back depth is great. If you can bench Scary Terry and still win a matchup and get above average points, I think your team is doing good enough to win. And obviously you did, but there's a lot here. There's a lot here to like. I compare that to Morganelli's, which now has a ton of questions, and Gabe Davis is one that he's definitely outperformed here. As someone who tried aggressively to get Gabe Davis last year, I'm glad I did. I was eventually glad I didn't. But it's super boomer bust. He's pretty much touchdown dependent, aside from these 2 yardage totals. So I don't have a good read on Gabe Davis. But if he's going to be the 3rd wide receiver on my team, I would take that. There's no issue with that. And I think this is a new Puka floor game. I think Puka's still fine. I don't think there's any reason to push the panic button. I think this little readout here is definitely pushing the panic button. Is going to be the Cooper Kupp show. I mean, that's true. But I think that I think he's still averaging 11 points a game from here on out, which I think is fine. I mean, you have enough of these guys. We have Devontae Smith, who has a good ceiling, though he's been underperforming. These guys, it's definitely not the same team without Justin Jefferson, but it's still a good team. There is depth now at running back with the acquisition of Rachaad White. Pierce is getting outplayed by Singletary, which is one of the reasons why I drafted Singletary at the end of the draft, because Pierce had efficiency issues at last year as well. But we'll have to see what comes out of that. And you have the issue with Rachaad White, but that's against Detroit, who has a great front line. So not super worried about that. The depth is pretty poor down here at both. I mean, you have the running back depth up here; it's fine. But wide receiving depth without Jefferson, this is just a very downgrade, a very watered down wide receiver core. So I'd have some concerns, but I wouldn't be freaking out if I'm Morganelli right now. I would be holding the course. I want to say that, but I guess I'm saying that for my record, right? Because I have a piss poor team at 4-2, and he has a better team than mine at 2-4. So maybe I am pushing the panic button here, and I need to buy a guy from someone at the bottom, like Brandon Ayuk from Robert's team if he's selling. Jay wasn't selling before; he might be now. I don't know. You can grab a Deontay Johnson or a T Higgins, and hoping T Higgins turns it around might be someone you can get. But definitely some concerns, I guess. I just don't really know how I would be handling it. But I think combined, having the team being okay, and combined with having just a bad record as it is, see, this is getting tough. I don't know if I move him down a little bit. It was not pretty last week. But so if I'm putting Morganelli at number 6, that would then assume that we have who above him? Freaky above him. It would assume Nolan above him. It would assume Zach above him, and then Chris and Elliott. Are all those statements true? I guess the only questions there are Freaky's and Chris's team. So Kyron Williams, whatever, out. He's injured. Pollard's on bye. There are no running backs this week for him. Trending right direction. Yeah, I knowing this team, knowing from what I'm seeing out of Dan Campbell, even if Jahmyr Gibbs is back, I don't think he just suddenly takes a workhorse role with Montgomery being out. They're going to lean on Craig Reynolds, and Gibbs is going to have the same role he had before. That's my. I have a pretty firm belief on that. I'd be happy to be wrong, but I just don't think I will be. Khalil Herbert on IR. There's no running back, so he's going to be bidding heavily for sure on probably either Craig Reynolds or Jordan Mason, or who else is out there. I don't remember who else is out there, but still he'll be bidding. Always a threat with Tua and Tyreek. That's a crazy good stack. And Sun God is a fantastic receiver to have as well. But the running back room is definitely a bit scary. I don't even know what Pollard did last night. Yeah, he put up 16 points. 7. Some good receiving numbers. Wow, wow, wow. So he's fine. I'm still not totally sold on Pollard. I think I gave my opinion on the trade last week. But I think it was a pretty good trade. And it carries risk on both sides. So we'll see. But which team? I guess my question to myself now is, and the question we pose to the Power Rankings committee is this team better than Morganelli's from here on out? We saw the ceiling, right? Last week was a ceiling game. Almost. I mean, I guess it could go higher. But for all intents and purposes, I'd say it's a ceiling game. I think we're going to see some losses going through bye weeks, though a nice, soft, easy game against Robert in week 7 with a lot of his team on bye. Then Jace, who's got a pretty... I call it a soft schedule going ahead, so he can work his way back up. But then Morganelli's team, he goes against Jake, and then McGovern. And then Robert. So both have pretty, I'd say, easy schedules. So I put them both pretty much in the same place. I think that there's definitely a little bit of a break after, I don't know. I think I have to put, this is so hard. This is so hard. Let's see. I gotta look at some other teams. I don't think it's better than Nolan's. I don't think it's better than Zach's. Yeah, okay. So we're gonna put in Kraken combined tour, followed by, oh, you know what? You know what I didn't do? I might have to move that. I keep forgetting because Chris is 6-0, and I kind of factor that in a little bit to the power rankings just because I don't know, only a little bit. I guess I don't factor it in a lot, but it's just a little. It's just not great, and this is looking like a loss. This is gonna be a tough. Well, I guess I don't know. I don't know Jenny's bye. Okay, so Hall, Brees Hall, Spears, Cooks. So Pickens can slot in. And then, yeah, she can throw, like, Mooney in there. So she's going to need a running back. That's going to be very expensive week for for Fab, if I'm going to guess. Yeah, I just don't really know for sure. I don't think I can drop Chris all the way to number 5. It's been definitely a couple of rough weeks, but if you just look at the matchup, it's a dud week for Ridley. He doesn't have Aaron Jones or Christian Watson in here. Aaron Jones is he's on bye, so you have to consider that as well. That's a floor game for Bijan, right? Almost. That's almost a floor game. So, 11 targets for Laporta here, I think turns into more points. Hawkinson, they're still trying. That team is an absolute mess without Jefferson. I know the idea is that Hawkinson, Osborne, and Addison are just gonna get their volumes way up. I don't think. I sorta. I actually think Madison is probably the biggest beneficiary of the Jefferson injury, just because that team has no offensive identity without Jefferson. There's gonna be a lot of dump offs, and Madison's gonna, even though he might not be efficient with it, he wasn't last week against a really bad Chicago defense, but he's gonna get a lot of touches. So I'm not saying he becomes elite. I just think he's the biggest beneficiary. But everyone else should see an uptick in volume as well. I think this team's ceiling is still really, really high. Though I don't know. So it's either between. Would I rather have Chris's team, or would I rather have Freaky's team? And I'd say at the moment, did he just update this while I'm okay? So he's looking at his team right now too. In a vacuum, I think just the like Tyreek Hill is just such a tantalizing talent, and so is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I know Chris has Bijan. I'd rather have Tyreek Hill. I mean, this is some scary running back depth. Chris's isn't great either, but I'd say they're about in the same realm. So is there even, I don't even know where a tier break would be at this point. There's so many of these teams now that are so close to the same that it's kind of hard to choose. I think I do think I'm gonna put Freaky's team here. Just because a bad game from Tyreek Hill is basically, I mean, I don't want to say that's basically the end of it, but because that's not true. But I think there's just less stability in here, so I think that's fine if I'm Freaky. Getting that, you're gonna get I gotta send over the weekly top score on Venmo or PayPal or whatever, and then then that'll be that. But I'm trying to figure out where the tier break ends up being at this point, because before it was right around here, but there's really just not. It's just a big question mark, right? I don't see really much of a difference in any of these teams but like Elliott's at the top. Then again, now Elliott has a bunch of injuries too, but the injuries aren't grave enough to knock him all the way down. Right, like Montgomery's gonna be out for a while, maybe a couple weeks. The MRI, I mean, that's the big thing. If McCaffrey goes down, then yes, Elliott joins the ranks of basically everybody else. This is a very uninspiring looking team, honestly, for this week with Chase out on bye. But still better than most teams out there, and this should be a big game for Hurts. So, we'll see what ends up happening there. But I would put at number 4. I think this is where I'm going to put James White babies. Didn't I have him down at like number 7 last week? I think I flip-flop on Nolan's team every single week. Cause let's see. What it was week 5, I want to say. Yeah, it wasn't great, but he's also missed. He had some guys on bye, so maybe I jumped the gun a little bit. I do think it's a good team. So I'm gonna put James. Actually, I would rather have. Hang on. I'm gonna put Chris here. Crew. I would rather have Nolan's team than Chris's team right now. That'll change if Josh Allen's injured for a while, but I would rather this team, I feel like, can survive bye weeks, and they'll just continue to move up. So that's how I feel about it. So I'm gonna put Nolan's team up here. So James White babies, right? What do we got here? So yeah, love watching Derrick Henry. Always so much fun. But Ken Walker, an elite RB1 at this point, right? It's some great games, getting touchdowns every single game. That probably won't keep up, but who knows? They keep moving it, and he's heavily involved. He has 23 touches, right, and then 20 touches. Am I an idiot? So those are receptions. I was looking at the wrong thing. So 22. 22. Am I going blind? 22, 22, 15, 14 on the bench. Algier had 13 touches. He's got good depth at a premium position. So I like this team's prospects. I like how they will fare for the rest of the season. And then I think up here we're gonna do Zach pulling out just a nail biter there at the end, 1.5 points. So yeah, Deebo Samuel being hurt, I mean, that happens all the time, and that is tough after such like a strong first few weeks, and then falling off here a bit. So I don't know. They say he's day to day. But it happens every year. If he can come back and be healthy, look at that cupcake schedule. Look at all that nice, beautiful green. But I mean, this team is still, Pittman gets tons of targets. That team plays from behind a lot. Diggs is Diggs. Kirk Cousins, you might need a makeover here at quarterback without Jefferson, but he has the number 2, the number 3, and the number 4 wide receivers in our fantasy league. So number 2 is Diggs, 3 is Thielen, and 4 is DJ Moore. And then obviously Pittman's been doing great, like I said, and Debo is a threat when he's healthy. Swift, fantastic running back, consistent, 15 points a game ever since that first week dud. The overall running back depth is, it's a little scary, but Barkley's healthy again, adds another threat to this team. So again, it's possible that bye weeks will be sort of tough, but it looks like week 13 might be kind of tough. But overall, I think it's just one of the strongest teams in the league at the moment. It's possible I eat my words on that. I just like what I've been seeing so far, but these are all basically in the same tier for a reason. I think there's gonna be a lot of shifting around in here. I think it shifts around a lot each week. But what doesn't is Elliott is still at the top. I'm gonna give Elliott now the time that he asked for. So I wish you would talk about my team more. Why didn't you talk about my team last week? So I'm gonna talk about it a little bit, okay? Jalen Hurts up here at the top. This was just like last year. You could say, oh yeah, he's dependent on rushing touchdowns, which he kind of is. These aren't great passing numbers, but he's designed to get the ball a ton. And even on a horrible game, matches career worst in interceptions here, he still puts up 24 points. This is basically his low, and that's against New England. New England does that a lot. He's got definitely a tough schedule in here, but I think he'll be okay. So solid. You can't really do much better in the QB realm. Hollywood Brown, been pretty solid, but sort of like Gabe Davis, right? He's been sort of like a Gabe Davis this year, just with a lot more targets, but they're been very inefficient with them. So I don't love Hollywood Brown as a number 1, first of all, but he's not his number 1. He has AJ Brown now as his number 1. No, he has Jamar Chase. So Marquise Brown is basically his number 3, right? Just like Gabe Davis is. So like I said, I don't like him as as your first or second option, but making that move to get AJ Brown from Pollard makes your wide receiving room look better, but at a significant cost to your running back room. And I thought like I said last week, I think it was an okay trade. It was something. I think I told Elliot because he was curious, and I said I think it was a decent trade. It wasn't one that you needed to make. I didn't really see much of a point to it, especially when the running backs are a premium and there's always a chance just for injuries. They're much harder to replace than wide receivers are. But it worked great for that first week, but then now we're looking down the barrel at a couple of injuries. I mean, I think this is the first real experience Elliott's had with injuries this year, at least that have negatively impacted him. I've been saying a ton that if it weren't for injuries to other players, Mostert wouldn't be getting all the usage he's getting if it weren't for the A-chain. Well, first the Jeff Wilson injuries and the A-chain injury. There's always been a lot of circumstance that's led to Mostert just getting the ball at will, and he's got to be. I mean, Mostert's also a guy who's always injured. To be having that kind of success with a guy who's perpetually injured is just crazy. But I think Montgomery's been really good. He's looked really good. Obviously, this is definitely a tough injury. So we'll see. I mean, that's tough. So between CMC, we'll see if he comes back too. It's a big question mark here, but I still think that some of these will pan out. Maybe some of them won't. This will be a not as elite as a team as he had before, but still the best team in the league. I think the revolving door at tight end is something he's going to want to figure out at trade deadline. I know I would be. But there's really not a whole ton of pieces I'd be willing to trade. So it's probably going to come down to picks. Zach Moss is kind of depth, but I could see some, I see Zach Moss getting eventually phased out. But some guy, he's still a guy I would keep just because he's a undrafted free, he's an unrestricted free agent going into next year. So he could be a bell cow for another team. We don't know, but it might be worth holding on to him. We'll see. But as far as being far and away the best team, I wouldn't say so anymore. But still the number one team in the league for now. And you will get your own little tier for it again. Jew MC. Let's just do that. Well, maybe I should. Yeah, that's fine. Not a big deal. So I think, there's none of that green tier anymore. But I think that's really it for power rankings, I'd say, this week. It was just an odd week. I think there's just a lot of teams, like I said before, there's a lot of teams that had just depressed point output all around, really. I think it was probably the lowest average points in a given week. So, well, I think it's just more of waiting to see what happens the following week. But, a lot of moving pieces. We got, some new faces up here in the top. Not up this top, but, with Zach now at third place, Jenny in fourth. I should lose to Elliott next week, so I expect... let's see the matchups here. If I'm going to predict outcomes, right, so I'll pick Elliott for this one. I pick Freaky here. I pick Nolan here. I'm going to pick Jenny here. I got to see. Because she does have Brees Hall out. And Chris is going to have Aaron Jones back, right? Where is Aaron? There is Aaron Jones. Yeah, I think maybe I would take Chris because of those buys for Jenny. So I think I would take Chris's team in that matchup, actually. It should be a good one, though. Zach here. And then I would take Morgan Ellie probably here. That's like a super lame prediction. I think I actually just ended up following the projections for each one, didn't I? Yeah. So, and I didn't even account for buys, so that was just pretty lazy. That was pretty lazy on my part. But I remember looking at Jay's team having all the buy issues. That's going to be really tough to fill. He's going to be having to spend some fab, though I said that last time. I think it's just some of those bye weeks are tough. But, yeah, so not really any gutsy calls on my part, but that's how I see it playing out for next week. And I think those kind of results keep Elliott at number 1, Chris at number 2 in the standings, keeps Zach at number 3. But then this is where it gets things get interesting a little bit. So I would expect James Whitebabies then to move up and reclaim 4th place, while Jenny's would fall to, because wasn't it Nolan versus... No, it wasn't Nolan versus Jake. It was Borganelli versus Jake. It was Nolan versus McGovern. Okay. But I do have Jake losing to Morganelli, which would bring Morganelli to 3 and 4. Jake down. Morganelli moves up. Freaky moves up after his win. So it'll be a lot of shifting around in these parts. So I put Nolan up here. So she goes to 5th. I drop down to probably 7th or so, I think. Something like that. I don't know. But that's enough. So that's it for power rankings. So I hope you enjoyed power rankings week 8. Did I say week 7? I think it was week 7 anyway. Week 7 brought to you by Modern Man Morganelli's Media Meats. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.